Hi, I'm Joe Sessions. I've had the privilege of teaching a bunch of kids through racing RC cars for about the last year. I did a summer camp last year, and I've had an elementary school class 2 or 3 days a week. So one thing I got to tell you is, to me, you're only teaching them something if you're racing them and there's doing some assembly. If you're handing them a new Traxxas ready to run out of the box, I think you're just kind of giving them further entitlement. And, you know, you're giving them a $300 toy. Go have fun, kid. So I think your two options to do this right are, one, make them contribute to it somehow. Should they pay for a quarter of it? Should they pay for a half of it? Two, they should try to do all the assembly that they can. Now, to go with new stuff, I have another video on a couple of kits that work out great. The Tamiya Sand Vipers I thought was really good, and the ECX amp. Those were great. But the problem, the disadvantage of those, I should say, is those are definitely going to be starter cars, and you're going to end up upgrading the car to a better car later if they're going to really start racing. And really, I can't really see running a program like this where each car is a $700 investment. And that's what it would be if you bought a modern, brand new racer car like that people actually go race at the track, and bought, even just beginner but name brand components. It's going to rack up pretty fast that way. So Team Associated has been making the RC10 line since they started the sport, basically in about 1984. So there was first the RC10, and then it's moved up, and then they started putting the letter B on there because in the early 90s there became buggies and trucks. So anyway, RC10, B2, B3, B4. Now they went up to B5. All of those cars just mentioned were rear motor. Then the whole sport shifted to mid-motor because we started mostly racing on carpet where we have tons of traction. So we don't need all that weight on the rear wheels anymore. We want to shift some to the front to get good traction around the corners. Also, the B5 was the first one really that had gotten strong enough to deal with these new powerful brushless motors. So you don't want to go older than B5. A B5 roller, meaning no electronics, but with wheels on it, a B5 roller will go for about $100 on eBay, give or take. Might have some upgrades, you might pay a little more. It's going to be in that ballpark. Whereas the new B6.1 is a $300 kit, and that's no electronics, that's not even wheels. That's a lot more. So going used saves you a lot, and at a beginner skill level, it just doesn't make any difference. You don't need that extra 2% of speed you're going to get from the newest car. Now, guys that have gotten good at racing, they win or lose on 1 or 2% of speed. But beginners, it doesn't make a darn bit of difference. So a B5m is perfectly adequate. You can go ahead and go for the B6. The B6 is a little easier to tune. It's a little easier to get it all set up right. Again, for the first 6 months of your kid driving, or for you driving if you're a beginner, I'm still a beginner and I've been at this about a year. Perfectly adequate. B5m, perfectly adequate. So when you've started with only $100 in the car, and then you're kind of willing to put in cheaper components, you can actually still put a brushed motor in this. You might go, why would I do that? Yeah, you don't have to. You will have to have a LiPo battery because that's all that fits in this body. But you could go with a $15 brushed motor and a $15 ESC. That'd be $30 in those two components. You do need to go for $50 in the controller, and I would tell you to spend at least $50 for the ProTech servo. You just don't want to skimp on your servo, and you don't want to skimp on your radio, believe it or not. You might think, oh, well, the motor power is where it's at. No. When you're a beginner, the slower the motor, the better, man. You will get around the course faster with a slower motor. If you just buy the roller and then you buy the components and you sit down and put it together, and your kid does, he's going to be like, oh, okay, well, how do I do this? And start using that wrench and the little hex driver and understand what his components are. And just putting those in there is some assembly, and it's better than an RTR. As far as what kind of the disposition of that kid toward his car, he's more familiar with it. He's not afraid of it. When something breaks, he's like, oh, let me see if I can fix it. I have seen the kids who, when they get the RTRs, their first wreck, they're just like hopeless. They're just like, oh, it broke. can you get this fixed? Like they don't, it's like entitlement, you know? $100 roller, $50 servo, $50 radio. We've been really happy with these. The kids love them. The reason to go with Team Associated, I asked some guys like, hey, I don't want to just be partial to Team Associated because I remember the RC10 from when I was a kid, and that's what everybody really wanted. And it's name recognition and everything. And I was told on pretty good authority, a guy who's been racing about 30 years, basically said, you know, go with Team Associated. If everybody's doing the same thing, the same car, then they can share parts. Somebody's got a spare arm. If somebody breaks an arm, great. The parts are more readily available and they're cheaper than any other brand because it's really one of the most popular ones. You can still easily get parts for a B5m. It's not too old. Their parts are everywhere for it. And basically, he just said, you know, they're great cars. The buggy will interchange parts with the truck, the T5m. When you take a step up from this, the cars, like as far as, I don't even know if step up is the right word, but other brands, some people like them more, the serious racers, but they break more easily. The parts cost twice as much. You see, this is not what we're going for with a bunch of kids learning to race. So Team Associated is the solution. And so if you start with a T5, if you start with a B5m or a B6, but you won't need to upgrade the whole car. Like the whole car is going to serve you just fine for a year or two. And that might be as long as the kid is involved in it. And then you can sell, you know, 2 years from now, you could sell it for $80. Hard to beat that. So I hope this has been a help. I hope you'll look at our other videos and that we can help you get an RC program running wherever you are. Because with all these kids on screens all the time, this is a great way to get real bonding with kids. They have to grow up a lot to race, a lot of them. And there's just a lot of maturity and growth benefits in this whole thing if run correctly. Again, you can run it incorrectly and just, you know, give them another toy. But this is like, are you going to invest the care and the quality time with your kid or the kids in your area to really help them mature and come along? Because, you know, at age 8, age 10, hey, it's not many years till these guys should be self-sufficient in lots of ways. Thanks for watching. Hope this has been helpful.